The transmission came in the dead of night. I was half drunk, slouched in my quarters aboard the ISS Revenant, orbiting the ruins of the Draconian frontier. The message was short, too short. One sentence from the scout team on Vega Outpost 7. No survivors, no signals, fleet destroyed. And then nothing. Not static, not distortion, just silence. I sat there staring at the comms log, the chill of sobriety crawling up my spine. Draconians didn't go silent. They didn't get destroyed. They destroyed others. For nearly a century, their empire strangled half the outer systems. Worlds were burned, colonies enslaved, entire species vanished under their iron-scaled heel. We'd fought them, sure, but barely held the line. The only thing keeping Earth safe was the uneasy truce and the sheer terror the Draconians inspired across the stars. And now this? Their entire frontline fleet, the largest in the quadrant, gone. Not a distress call, not a single escape pod, no chatter from the thousands of crew, no debris field. I stood and hit the general alarm. The klaxon wailed through the ship. Within minutes, my bridge crew assembled. Commander Harlan, my XO, looked like hell, face pale, eyes sunken. "Sir," he said, "we just got a priority link from High Command. They want confirmation. Is the Draconian fleet really gone?" I nodded grimly. "It is. At least at Vega 7, Ensign Clark pulled up a sensor sweep on the main screen. Sir, here's the live feed from the scout drone." The view flickered in, cold, black space. Starfield unmarred. Where the Draconian dreadnoughts should have been, there was emptiness. Then the camera panned slowly across the wreckage. Not wreckage in the usual sense, not battle damage, no scarring from energy weapons or kinetic slugs. The ships looked peeled, hollowed out. Enormous battlecruisers with their hulls sliced open like meat, their inner compartments sterilized to the molecular level. No bodies, no atmosphere, no black boxes transmitting emergency data. Harlan whispered, "Who the hell did this?" I said nothing. I was watching the edges of the footage, flickers of distortion, as if space itself had been altered. Clark pointed it out. "Sir, those readings, graviton flux, tachyon displacement, I don't think this was any weapon we know of." I slammed my fist on the console. "Get us closer. We need a full spectrum scan. If something took out the Draconian fleet, we have to know what it was, and if it's still here." The crew moved fast, adrenaline wiping the fatigue from their faces. As the Revenant burned toward the Vega perimeter, I patched into Earth Command. Admiral Steele came on screen, steel-jawed, eyes like flint. "Captain Rorton, is it true?" he demanded. "Yes, sir. No survivors. No signals. The fleet's annihilated." His face darkened. "You are to prioritize intelligence collection. If this was a new Draconian weapon gone rogue, or worse, a new player, Earth must know. Proceed with extreme caution." I acknowledged. The link cut. In the silence, Harlan spoke. "Sir, if something out there took out the Dracs, what chance do we have?" I didn't answer, because deep down I already knew. We were too late. The Revenant broke into the Vega sector at sublight speeds, hull humming with the tension of every man aboard. My gut was cold stone. No chatter from nearby beacons, no sensor pings from outposts, no patrols, dead space. This wasn't just an ambush site or aftermath of battle. This whole region felt wrong. We passed the outer debris belt first. The remains of a Draconian supply convoy drifted in frozen silence. I ordered Clark to magnify the wrecks. The freighters were twisted wreckage, massive cargo haulers with their cores gutted from within, no hull breaches from the outside. Internal implosion. Clean. Precise. "Jesus," Clark muttered. "That's surgical." I nodded grimly. Not war, Not piracy. Something else. We kept moving. The farther we went, the stronger the distortions became. Gravimetric sensors picked up space-time shearing ahead. Quantum noise levels spiked off the charts. "Sir," Harlan said quietly, "long-range probes just failed. Systems fried the moment they entered the sector core." "EMP?" I asked. He shook his head. "No known profile. Something deeper." I swallowed my instinct to pull back. Too late for that now. "Push through," I ordered. "Full shields. All scans passive. No active sweeps. We don't want to advertise ourselves." The crew obeyed, tension thick as molasses. Every man here had fought the Dracs. We knew what they were. Brutal, merciless, dominant. The idea that something else had erased their front fleet made the blood run cold. Then Clark's voice broke the silence. "Captain, I found them." On the main screen, the Draconian war fleet came into view. Thousands of ships, dreadnoughts, battleships, heavy cruisers, hung lifeless in orbit around Vega 7's shattered moon. No formation, no engines, no power signatures. Harlan sucked in a breath. "Whole fleet, dead in the water." We approached slowly. No resistance, no automated defenses. The Draconian systems, usually hyper-paranoid, were dark. "Clark," I ordered, "find me one ship intact enough to board." He nodded, fingers flying over his console. "One candidate, sir. The Dreadlord to core, flagship class, hull mostly intact." I tapped the comms. "Prep the boarding team, full combat suits. This isn't a rescue op. It's a recon. Move." Harlan looked at me. "You're going in yourself?" "Damn right I am," I said. He didn't argue. He knew me too well. You don't send men where you won't go yourself. 20 minutes later, we breached the Takor. The docking umbilical locked on with a hiss. We cut through the Draconian airlock. I led 6 men inside, pulse rifles raised, every instinct screaming danger. The interior was a tomb. Draconian ships were normally oppressively loud. The thrum of reactors, the growl of hydraulics, the deep hum of grav plating. Now, nothing. Dead air. We swept corridor after corridor. No bodies, no blood, no signs of a firefight. Just abandonment, like the crew had ceased to exist. Even the ship's AI core was dark, offline, purged. Clark's voice came over the comms from the Revenant. "Captain, our scans show 0 life signs, 0 biomatter." "Repeat?" I asked, heart pounding. 0, not even cell residue. No organic molecules remain aboard that ship." "Impossible." I glanced at the walls. Where there should have been claw marks or carbon scoring from weapons, there was only a faint, glassy residue, almost like the walls themselves had been worn smooth. I ordered one of the men, Gunnery Sergeant Cole, to take a sample. His gauntlet scanner flickered erratically. "No reading, sir," he said. This isn't any material on record." Then Clark's voice snapped in again. "Captain, gravimetric surge inbound. Something's moving at the sector core." We froze. Harlan broke in from the bridge. "Massive energy spike. Non-Draconian signature. Unknown." "Pull us out," I barked. "Abort boarding, full extraction." We sprinted for the airlock. My blood pounded. Whatever was here, it hadn't finished its hunt. We barely made it back aboard the Revenant. The instant the umbilical sealed, I roared, "Get us out of range, now!" Main drives flared. The ship surged away from the wreck field. But it wasn't fast enough. Clark's console screamed with alerts. "Incoming object, superluminal approach, right on top of us." "Visual!" I shouted. The main screen flickered. Then a shape filled the void. Not a ship, not a life form. A vast, fractured silhouette, black against black, twisting like a wound in space itself. Geometry that shifted as you looked at it, angles that didn't stay constant, and something deeper, a presence, something that wasn't just watching, it was aware, It had noticed us. The crew stared, stricken. Even hardened veterans who'd faced Draconian warlords paled before that thing. Clark whispered, "Sir, it's broadcasting." A garbled signal bled into our comms, a low, grinding distortion that made my teeth ache. Beneath it, fragments of words in our language. "Survivors, violation, consumption, cease." Then silence. My blood ran cold. It wasn't just some alien predator. It understood us. It was speaking to us. "Full burn," I shouted. "Get us clear." Engines roared. The Revenant blasted away on emergency vectors, shields straining. The anomaly didn't follow, but it didn't have to. It had sent its message. Hours later, in high orbit beyond the Vega sector, we gathered on the bridge. No one spoke for long moments. Harlan finally broke the silence. "We need to send this to Earth." I nodded. "Package everything. Visual, telemetry, the transmission." Clark hesitated. "Sir, do you think the Draconians knew what they were facing?" I thought about the gutted ships, the smooth walls, the utter absence of life. "They didn't know," I said quietly. "And when they realized, it was too late." The message went out. Encrypted burst to Earth Command. An hour later, we got the reply. "Top secret priority. Omega Black. Captain Rorton, return to Earth immediately. Prepare for full briefing. This is now a Level 1 threat to humanity. Do not engage further." I stood alone on the observation deck, staring into the void where the Draconian Empire had died. Harlan joined me. "We fought monsters before," he said. "But this—" I shook my head. "This wasn't a war," I said softly. "It was an execution." And now Earth had seen the shadow of what was coming. Something that could erase even the Draconians. And knew we were next. The jump back to Earth wasn't fast enough. Even at FTL, hours stretched like days. My crew was running on fumes, cycling between grim silence and nervous pacing. Every man aboard the Revenant had fought Draconians, survived fleet engagements, black ops, worse. But this was different. This was beyond war. There was no enemy to track, no fleet formation, no chain of command. Just a force that should not exist. I spent most of the transit in my quarters, reviewing sensor data frame by frame, trying to make sense of what we'd seen. That thing, that presence. The deeper I looked, the worse it got. Telemetry showed space-time fluctuations off every known scale, mass readings that spiked and collapsed in impossible patterns, geometries that folded in and out of three-dimensional space. It wasn't just a weapon or a ship. It was the distortion, the infection. And the signal, the garbled message, was getting clearer the more Clark cleaned it. By the time we hit lunar orbit, we had a full translation. Cease expansion. Violation. Consumption phase initiated. No survivors permitted. We docked at Earth Orbital Command under armed escort. Not protocol. Paranoia. No one trusted anything coming back from Vega now. I led my senior crew into the debrief chamber. Bare steel, old Cold War paranoia made flesh. The brass were already waiting. Admiral Steele, Director Langley of Naval Intelligence, and a half-dozen generals who'd rarely left their bunkers in years. Steele's gaze locked onto mine the moment I entered. "Report." I spoke flat, stripped of bullshit. "Confirmed total annihilation of Draconian frontier fleet. No survivors, no functional wreckage. Anomalous entity engaged. Sent a direct warning to humanity." Langley leaned forward, fingers steepled. "Describe the entity." I gave them everything. The distortion, the impossible geometry, the psychological effect on the crew. When I finished, the room was dead silent. Steele finally spoke. "So, something killed the Draconian fleet, and it knew enough to broadcast a threat." I nodded. "More than a threat, An ultimatum. He looked to Langley. Analysis? Langley tapped a console. The main screen lit up, side-by-side comparisons of Vega sensor data and deep space probe footage from over a decade of exploration. We've seen faint traces of this anomaly before, Langley said coldly, but always at extreme range. Border incidents, dead colonies written off as freak events. I stared. You knew. Langley didn't blink. Suspected. Now confirmed. I felt my fists clench. You let us walk into it blind. Steele cut in. Captain, enough. We're past blame. Focus on containment. Containment? I almost laughed. This thing had erased a war fleet. Containment was a pipe dream. Steele pressed on. Your orders are clear. Earth fleet is on full war footing. All deep space exploration is suspended. All outer colonies are to be reinforced or evacuated. Langley added, your crew is now classified under Omega Black. No civilian contact, no press, no leaks. I kept my voice steady. And when this thing reaches us? Steele's gaze didn't waver. Then we will be ready. Lies. The days that followed were chaos. Earth's military machine, long grown lazy under the Draconian stalemate, now shifted into overdrive. Shipyards hammered out hulls around the clock. Orbital defense platforms came online. Old Cold War bunkers were reopened beneath every major city. But it wasn't enough. Every man who'd seen the Vega data knew it. This wasn't a war we could win. Back aboard the Revenant, my crew was restless. Half had requested transfers to core defense units. The other half buried themselves in prep drills, as if sheer muscle memory could stop what was coming. Harlan found me on the observation deck again. We both stared out at Earth below. So beautiful, so fragile. They don't get it, he said softly. No, I agreed. They think this is another invader, another fleet to shoot down. He looked at me. What do you think it is? I exhaled slowly. I think it's older than the Draconians, older than any of us, and I think we woke it up. Then the second message came. Not from Vega, from within Sol. An automated mining outpost on Titan's far side transmitted a final burst before going dark. Only 2 words made it through. It's here. We scrambled the Revenant on immediate orders. Full combat readiness. Titan's orbit was a graveyard. Mining rigs gutted, drones drifted in frozen silence. And at the heart of the debris, the distortion. Not as large as Vega's, yet, but growing. A fracture in space, shimmering like black glass, pulsing in time with some unseen rhythm. Clark ran scans from orbit. Sir, it's not just static. There's structure inside the distortion. Harlan frowned. Structure? Clark enhanced the feed. Within the fracture, faint outlines shifted. Geometric patterns folding and unfolding. Something was building itself. An invasion point. A seed. And then the signal hit us. Same as before, but stronger. Clearer. Cease expansion. This sector is now under cleansing. No survivors permitted. Not a warning. A declaration. Steele's voice cut through the emergency channel. Captain Warden, engage with extreme caution. Priority is intel. Do not escalate. Bullshit. We were past diplomacy. I made the call. Arm all weapons. Target the distortion. If this is a beachhead, we burn it now. Harlan hesitated, then nodded grimly. Missile tubes cycled, railguns primed, plasma lances powered up. Fire! The first salvo ripped into the distortion. Space rippled violently. For a moment the fracture seemed to waver, to scream, but then it expanded. The energy absorbed, twisted, redirected. Beams of distorted gravity lashed out, slicing through one of our escort drones like paper. Clark shouted, "It's feeding on the energy. Every hit makes it stronger. A trap. A lure." "Cease fire!" I barked. We pulled back, but the fracture was growing, fast, already triple the size from first contact. It wasn't just a seed, it was an incursion point, a direct gateway, and we'd just fed it. Earth Command ordered immediate withdrawal. The Revenant burned back toward Earth at maximum speed. We weren't chased, not yet. The thing was still unfolding itself at Titan, but the message was clear. It wasn't coming. It was already here. And now Earth had hours, maybe days, to prepare for the impossible. Back in Earth orbit, I stood once more before Steele and Langley. "This isn't a threat we can fight," I said coldly. "Conventional weapons only feed it. The more we resist, the stronger it grows." Steele's jaw tightened. "Options?" Langley spoke flat. "Containment is no longer viable. Evacuation of key assets already underway." I stared at them both. "You're preparing fallback colonies." Langley nodded. "Some of us will survive. Earth may not." And there it was, the unspoken admission. Earth's rulers had already written off the homeworld, but I hadn't. I looked at Harlan. He understood instantly. "Captain?" he asked. I met his gaze. "We go back to Vega." He frowned. "Sir," I spoke low. "Somewhere out there, in what's left of the Draconian databanks, there may be an answer, something they learned too late." I turned to Steele. "Authorize my mission. One last recon to Vega, to find out what the Draconians knew and why they died trying to stop it." Steele stared long, then nodded once. "Godspeed, Captain. You're our last shot." And so the Revenant would fly again, back into the darkness, back to the heart of annihilation, to face the thing that had already claimed the stars, and now hungered for Earth. We launched from Earth under black protocols. No broadcast, no beacon, no backup. The Revenant was a ghost ship now, crew stripped to the bone. Only those willing to face certain death remained. Of my original bridge staff, maybe half stayed. Harlan, Clark, Cole, a handful of gunners and engineers. That was it. We jumped back toward Vega in cold silence. The stars beyond the viewport felt colder now, emptier. Clark spoke what we were all thinking. "Sir, we're flying straight into it," I nodded. "That's the point. We needed answers. The Draconians hadn't just died, they'd failed. Whatever final truths they'd uncovered were still buried in the wreck field. And somewhere in that data was our only hope." The jump drive cooled as we dropped back into Vega space. It was worse now. The sector was a black grave, debris fields stretched for light minutes in every direction. But worse was the background distortion. It pulsed through every sensor feed. Every shadow seemed to move. The anomaly was still there, massive, lurking just beyond range, its event horizon flickering like a dying star. Clark whispered, "Sir, the mass readings, it's still growing." Of course it was, and soon Earth would be next. We threaded the wreck field with agonizing caution. Automated beacons we'd left on the Takor's hulk still pinged faintly, the only friendly signals left in the void. That's where we went first. The Draconian flagship drifted in cold silence, untouched since our last visit. But now we came with a new plan, to breach its central data vault. Draconian warships used biologically keyed encryption, locked to their ruling caste. Without a living Draconian, cracking it was impossible. Unless you knew where to look. We boarded fast, no time wasted. Cole and his Marines secured the entry corridors while Clark and I pushed straight for the vault core. It was buried deep, a triple-sealed chamber behind what used to be the flagship's throne room. The air inside was colder than space. No lights, no gravity. Just a faint, humming presence. The last flicker of the ship's once mighty AI. I floated to the vault console and hooked in our bypass rig. An ugly device ripped from the labs at Luna Prime, built specifically for this insane mission. Clark worked fast, sweat beading on his brow. "Signal's dirty," he muttered. Their AI's almost dead. I can't guarantee a full pull. Get what you can, I said. Seconds ticked by like hours. Then the console flickered. A single file tree unfolded. One entry burned brighter than the rest. Project Vault Ascendancy. Clark stared. Sir, this isn't military. I nodded grimly. Number, it's a cover-up. We downloaded everything we could. Back aboard the Revenant, we pored over the data. It was fragmentary, corrupted. But the truth was there, buried under layers of imperial obfuscation. The Draconians had known about the anomaly, not for weeks, not months, for decades. Their deep space scouts had encountered traces of it far beyond mapped space, ancient structures, dead systems stripped of life, entire star clusters sterilized, and always the same signature, the same distortion. At first they dismissed it, a cosmic freak, an anomaly to avoid. Then colonies began to vanish, outposts went dark, warfleets failed to return. In desperation, the Draconian High Caste launched Project Ascendancy, a secret initiative to weaponize their own biological essence. The goal was obscene, to uplift their species beyond the anomaly's reach, to become immune to its predations. But they failed. The final log entries were chilling. The Ascendancy fails. It consumes not only flesh but thought, memory, identity. We are undone. This is not a predator. It is the cleansing of deviation, the enforcement of order. I sat back, throat dry. Harlan looked at me. Sir, what the hell is it? I spoke slowly. Not a creature, not a fleet. It's a correction mechanism. Clark frowned. Correction for what? I tapped the screen. For life itself. The more we read, the worse it got. The entity wasn't just hunting expansionist empires. It was targeting any technological species that crossed a certain threshold. FTL travel, AI development, stellar engineering. In the Draconian records, this threshold was called the Ascendancy Barrier. Once a species triggered it, the anomaly would appear, not instantly, but inevitably. A kind of universal immune response, a cosmic scalpel. And Earth had just crossed that line. Our first true quantum AI, our first stellar mining rigs, our first planetary fusion cores. We had called out into the dark, and something had answered. Clark looked up, face pale. Sir, if this is true, there's no fighting it. I shook my head. Not with ships, not with guns. Harlan asked the only question that mattered. Then what do we do? The answer came from the deepest part of the data vault. A single fragment marked failed countermeasure. It described an experimental weapon, not an energy beam or kinetic slug, a conceptual disruptor, a device meant to fracture the coherence of the anomaly itself, to break its underlying logic. The Draconians had never finished it. Their minds, even their best, were too hierarchical, too rigid. They couldn't think outside the paradigm the entity enforced. But humans, we thrived on chaos, on unpredictability. Where the Draconians had failed, maybe we had a chance. I stood. We take this home, I said flatly. We build it, and we try. Harlan met my gaze. And if it fails? I smiled grimly. Then we go down swinging. We burned hard for Earth. No stealth this time, no caution. Speed mattered now. But already the distortion at Titan had grown. Probes showed new fractures blooming near the Jovian moons. The invasion had begun. Earth's skies were black with warships as we re-entered orbit. I transmitted the data straight to Steele's command node. Within minutes, we were summoned planet-side. This time the bunker wasn't a conference room. It was a war council. The world's last, maybe. Steele, Langley, and the Joint Chiefs pored over the Draconian data with grim faces. Finally, Steele looked up. You propose we build this conceptual weapon? Yes, sir. Langley's voice was tight. Do you even understand how it works? Barely, I admitted. But it's the only option we have. The entity can't be stopped by force. It can only be made to withdraw, if we can fracture its coherence. Steele exhaled. You'll have full access to the Black Labs. Whatever you need. He leaned in. Captain, you understand. If this fails, Earth falls? I met his gaze. Then we don't fail. The clock was ticking. Outside, the first tendrils of the distortion had begun to touch Mars. Mining colonies went dark. The outer fleet was already falling back. Time left? Maybe a week. Maybe less. And so began mankind's last gamble. Project Prometheus. An attempt to turn the very chaos of the human mind into a weapon. We would either shatter the entity's logic or be erased with the rest of the stars. They called it Project Prometheus, but it was no beacon of hope. It was a weapon born of desperation, stitched together from alien theory and human madness. The core scientists were hand-picked, not the comfortable ones from academic labs, but the outliers. Fringe theorists, rogue AI architects, ex-Black Ops technologists, men who had already been broken and rebuilt by the dark truths of the universe. And now they were racing a clock they couldn't even see. I was given operational command, not because I was the best, but because I'd already looked into the abyss and come back breathing. That counted for something now. Harlan remained at my side. Clark took charge of data integration. Cole and his Marines became our on-site security, and not just for external threats. Paranoia was spreading. The entity wasn't waiting anymore. Reports came in hourly. The Titan anomaly had consumed the moon's surface entirely. Ganymede's atmosphere was evaporating. Jovian colonies cut off. Worse, Earthside distortions had begun. Small at first, power grids flickering, data anomalies in high AI networks, time displacements in quantum systems. The thing wasn't just coming physically. It was infiltrating at every level, reality itself starting to come apart. I briefed Steele in the main war bunker. The entity is accelerating, I said flatly. Our window is shrinking. He grimaced. Progress? I handed him the latest report. We've stabilized the conceptual disruptor framework, but the delivery system is untested. Langley, present as always, interjected. And if you're wrong? I looked him in the eye. Then there won't be anyone left to say, I told you so. Meanwhile, the cracks were showing, not just in the world, but in leadership. Earth Command was fragmenting, national factions pulling resources, old rivalries surfacing like rot in the bones. Half the orbital fleet had redeployed to defend China's core cities. The Eurobloc was evacuating its elites to off-world habitats. The American command was split between defending Earth and abandoning it. Steele fought to hold it together, but he was one man, and the fear was winning. Inside Prometheus Lab 1, a buried complex beneath Antarctica, we built our weapon. Not a bomb, not a beam. A conceptual fracture engine designed to emit patterns of quantum-coherent chaos, something the entity couldn't process, because in the end, that was humanity's only weapon, our unpredictability. Where the Draconians had failed, locked in their rigid hierarchy, we thrived in disorder. Madness as survival. But the thing knew. We felt it, even underground. The dreams came first, violent, fractured visions of impossible geometry, men waking, screaming, unable to speak what they'd seen. Then the suicides, 3 techs in one night, their minds burned out by mere proximity to the entity's influence. Clark isolated the pattern. A low-band signal, somehow piggybacking on quantum channels. Not sound, not light, intent. It was trying to break us before we could finish. I doubled security, rotated crew, kept my core team isolated, but the fractures spread. Cole reported strange readings in the lower levels, corridors shifting subtly, distances changing, reality warping under the entity's touch. And then we lost a test rig. During a field calibration of the disruptor core, the lead engineer, Dr. Levin, simply vanished. One moment he was adjusting the harmonic phase. The next, gone. No trace, no mass displacement. Only his tools remained, humming with residual distortion. The message was clear. It could reach us anywhere. And we were running out of time. The outer solar defense net collapsed 3 days later. The anomaly breached Mars' orbit. The last defense fleet engaged and was wiped out in minutes. No survivors, no signals. Sound familiar? I watched the battle feed in grim silence, Harlan beside me. They never had a chance, he said quietly. No, I agreed. And we won't either, unless this works. The final assembly began. We built the core into a prototype delivery shell, an old stealth corvette retrofitted to carry the disruptor into the heart of the anomaly. One ship, one shot. I volunteered to fly it. There was no debate. Everyone knew why. I'd already stared into it once. I'd go again. Launch was set for 48 hours, but the entity moved faster. At 0300 hours, Earth itself was hit, the first direct distortion event in low orbit. An entire ring of orbital habitats blinked out, gone, as if they'd never existed. Groundside, cities from New York to Moscow reported reality bleed. Structures warping, time stuttering, people vanishing mid-step. Panic gripped the planet. Governments fractured, riots flared, evacuation ships overloaded. It was the endgame. In the war bunker, Steele met me with bloodshot eyes. "You're launching now," he said. No room for argument. I nodded. Harlan gripped my arm. "I'm coming with you." I didn't argue. I needed him. Clark looked ready to speak, then just saluted. He'd stay behind, keep the systems stable as long as he could. Cole led the final escort team. We fought through chaos in the corridors. Refugees, panic, armed factions clashing even as the world fell apart. The prototype, call sign Nyx, launched under cover of the last functional planetary shields, a black dagger piercing the void. The entity's presence was overwhelming now, a vast wound across the stars, stretching from the outer system inward. As we cleared Earth orbit, the stars flickered. Clark's final transmission crackled over the comms. "Give it hell, sir!" I keyed the reply. "See you on the other side." If there was one. We burned for the anomaly at max velocity. Every screen distorted. Every sensor read false. Time dilated. Hours became minutes, then stretched again. The entity was watching us. It knew. As we crossed the event horizon, space ceased to be space. No stars, no coordinates, only the impossible geometry of the thing. Vast structures unfolded, patterns too complex for the mind to hold. Harlan fought to keep the nav systems from crashing. Cole manned the weapon interface, knuckles white on the controls. I piloted by instinct. There was no map now, only intent. We had to reach the core, the one point of stillness at the heart of the storm. And then the voice came, not words, not sound, an absolute command. "Cease!" The ship shuddered, hull screaming, lights flickering. Harlan gritted his teeth. "It's trying to stop our thoughts, not just the ship." I forced my mind into motion, fingers moving by sheer will. We keep going. We keep going. The core loomed ahead, a sphere of anti-light devouring everything around it. This was it, the moment of truth. "Firing sequence active," Cole shouted. "Do it!" I roared. The disruptor core surged, a wave of quantum chaotic energy building to critical mass. The entity screamed, a wave of pressure slamming through the ship. Harlan convulsed. Cole collapsed. I held the trigger. One shot, one chance. Fire. The core detonated. A fractal bloom of impossible chaos ripped through the anomaly. For a moment, a fraction of forever, I saw it. Not a creature, not a mind, a mechanism, a machine older than stars, designed to prune, to cleanse. And now, confused, fractured. Reality snapped. The ship tore apart. My last thought. Did it work? Darkness. I awoke to pain, not the kind that floods the body, deeper than that. The pain of existence itself hanging by a thread. The world around me was wrong. Blackness pressed from every side. Shapes flickered in and out of phase. My breath echoed in a space that shouldn't have sound. Am I alive? I forced my eyes open. Systems rebooted. A faint HUD blinked across the cracked visor of my suit. I was floating in the void. No ship, no crew, just me. Fragments of memory came in shards. The launch, the breach, the firing, the core, blooming with impossible energy, had torn the entity's structure apart. I'd felt it in the marrow of my soul. But then, the ship disintegrated. And somehow, I was still here. A new flicker of light caught my eye. Not stars, not the cold void of space, but something else. Earth, or what remained of it. I drifted for what felt like hours. The suit's grav thrusters were offline. I had only a single emergency beacon left. With trembling fingers, I activated it. A thin, weak pulse broadcast on every surviving channel. Captain Rorden, alive, coordinates unknown, broadcasting distress. And then, a reply. Faint, broken. Revenant, picking, signal, hold. My heart slammed against my ribs. Someone was alive. The Revenant had survived. Time folded. I don't remember the wait, only the final moments, a shuttle breaking through the dark, Harlan's voice cutting through the static. "We've got you, sir." "Hang on." The airlock hissed. Hands grabbed me. I was pulled aboard. The world swam, faces blurred, oxygen burned in my lungs. And then, blackness again. I woke in a medbay. Harlan sat nearby, gaunt, eyes bloodshot but alive. "Sir," I managed a rasp. "Status, report." He nodded grimly. "The core fired. The anomaly fractured. You did it." I tried to rise. Pain shot through my side. I gritted my teeth. "Earth?" Harlan's face darkened. "Damaged. Bad. But not consumed." Over the next hours, I pieced together the fragments. The entity hadn't been destroyed, not fully, but its coherence had been shattered. The conceptual disruptor had triggered chaotic recursion in its core logic, breaking its automated cycle of consumption. For now, it had retreated, folded back into whatever dimension it had come from. Earth's skies were clearing, the distortions fading, but the scars remained. Global losses were staggering. Half the orbital habitats gone. Entire swaths of major cities erased. Populations displaced. Governments collapsed. But life, human life, remained. I was debriefed in a shattered war room beneath London, one of the few surviving command hubs. Steele looked 20 years older. Langley was gone, killed when Washington's bunkers failed. Only the hard bastards were left. I stood, weak but breathing, before the remaining council. "The entity isn't dead," I said flatly. "Only delayed." Steele nodded. "How long?" I shook my head. "Could be years, could be decades, maybe longer, but it will learn. Next time, it won't hesitate." Harlan joined me outside afterward. "The brass will spin this," he said bitterly. "Call it a victory." I looked at the broken sky. It was survival, not victory. He was silent for a moment. Then, "You think it'll come back?" I didn't hesitate. "Yes." And so began the next phase. Rebuilding, preparing, watching the stars with wary eyes. Project Prometheus was now the foundation of a new initiative, not just a weapon, but a philosophy. To embrace what had saved us, chaos, unpredictability, the refusal to be ordered, the only shield against the machine lurking beyond reality. As for me, I was no longer fit for command. Not officially. My body was broken, my mind marked. I saw the patterns even now, flickers at the edge of vision, reminders of what we'd faced, of what still waited. But I wasn't done. A small group remained, those who understood the truth. We called ourselves the Black Watch. Our mission was simple: to ensure humanity never grew complacent, to guard against the next incursion, to keep chaos alive, because in the end, that was life's only weapon against the void. I visited the ruins of Vega Sector once more, a final pass through the graveyard. Among the wreckage, I found a single fragment, a Draconian data shard, still flickering with degraded code. One final log. Cycle incomplete. Machine stirs. Watch the dark. I returned to Earth with the shard in my pocket, a reminder, a warning. And as I looked up at the stars, now clear once more, I knew one thing beyond all doubt. The machine would return. And next time, it would come for all of us. But we would be ready. No survivors, no signals, not this time. The first year after the event was hell. They called it the Fracture War in the history books. But there hadn't been a war. Not really. You don't fight a machine that rewrites reality itself. You survive it, if you're lucky. Earth was a wounded animal now, orbit scarred, continents fractured, billions dead. The survivors either hardened or broken. And under the rubble, a new order was rising. The Black Watch wasn't an official force at first, just a handful of us, those who had seen the entity face to face and lived. But that was enough. We understood what the politicians, the generals, the public couldn't, or wouldn't, face. It would come back. And next time, no disruptor would be enough. We moved in the shadows, pulling what resources we could from the shattered alliances. Steele backed us at first, quietly. The old bastard knew the truth, even if he couldn't say it aloud anymore. Earth's new leadership, what was left of the UN command, was too busy rebuilding, consolidating power, spinning stories of victory and resilience to keep the masses from losing their minds. But the cracks showed. Whole regions were lawless. Tech enclaves rose around surviving AI cores. Fringe cults worshipped the anomaly as a god. And through it all, the stars watched, cold, silent, waiting. We built our base in the remnants of Prometheus Lab 1, deep beneath Antarctic ice. The facility had survived mostly intact. Its shielded core still hummed with the chaotic energy that had crippled the entity. It was the perfect place. Harlan stood with me in the dark heart of the lab. The last fragment of the disruptor core floated between magnetic stabilizers, a shard of raw chaos barely contained. He looked at me. "You really think it's watching?" I nodded. "It always was." We weren't idle. The Watch became a network. Deep spies in every major command. Tech teams scouring the ruins of Vega for more data. Strike teams hunting anomaly cults before they could trigger another breach. And always, always, we watched the stars. Clark led the new sensor core, eyes on deep space, tuned to catch the first flicker of another incursion. His face had aged 20 years in one, like the rest of us. The reports came in slowly at first. Minor distortions in fringe systems, probe data showing localized space-time shifts, nothing big, nothing conclusive, but enough to know the machine was probing. Earth's leadership ignored us. Publicly, the UN declared the threat neutralized, the entity destroyed. The usual lies. They wanted peace, stability, control. But peace is a lie in the shadow of extinction. The first major breach came 18 months later. A mining colony in the Epsilon Eridani system, one of the first new settlements post-fracture. Cut off in minutes. All transmissions ended mid-sentence. Recon drones found only silence, structures warped, no survivors, no signals, sound familiar. We convened in the depths of Prometheus. Clark laid out the data. "The pattern's evolving," he said grimly. "It's not using the same entry vector. It's testing new thresholds." I nodded. "Learning from the disruptor." Harlan exhaled. "So it's adapting." I looked at them both. It always was. The disruptor bought us time. Nothing more. Steele finally came down to see us. He looked worse than I'd ever seen him. Thinner, worn. But his eyes still burned. He spoke to me alone in the old observation room. "You were right," he admitted. "They won't see it. They refuse." "They'll see when it's too late," I said. He nodded slowly. "I'll give you what I can, quietly, but be ready. When the next wave hits—" He didn't finish. Didn't have to. The Black Watch shifted fully to war footing. We began constructing new disruptor cores, smaller, more refined, faster to deploy. Mobile strike platforms, deep space traps, cognitive shields for critical systems, and contingency plans for when Earth falls. I didn't tell the public, didn't warn the masses. There was no point. They weren't ready. They couldn't be. Only those who'd seen the dark truth could stand against it. The months stretched. Breaches increased. Minor. Containable. For now. But each one showed new patterns. New logic. The machine was evolving. It had underestimated us once. It wouldn't again. I stood in the vault one night, watching the flickering core fragment. Harlan joined me. "You ever think about walking away?" he asked quietly. I shook my head. "Can't." "Me neither," he said. "But sometimes I wonder how long we can hold." I looked at the stars beyond the observation slit. "As long as we have to." Then the worst report came. Clark burst into the war room, eyes wide, face pale. "Deep scan, just came in. Sir, it's not one breach, it's 3. I froze. "Where?" He tapped the map. "Alpha Centauri. Proxima. Wolf 359. Multiple incursions. Simultaneous. It had stopped testing. It was starting to hunt again." The room fell into grim silence. I stood slowly. "Send the signal. Black Watch full alert. All assets to readiness level 1. Harlan met my gaze. "It's happening." I nodded. This is just the beginning. Earth was a flickering light in a sea of darkness now. We'd bought time, a few years maybe, but the machine had eternity, and it was coming. I recorded a message. One Steele helped smuggle into the core command net. The war was never won. The enemy was never defeated. Prepare or perish. Most wouldn't listen, but some would, and they'd be ready when the stars went dark again. The Watch grew in the shadows. More allies, more weapons, more minds twisted enough to fight a war reality itself was rigged to lose. I trained them personally, the best, the broken, the mad, because only those who'd faced the void and laughed had any hope of holding the line. And me. I lived on borrowed time. Every day the core fragment whispered at the edge of hearing. The machine's imprint burned into my skull. I'd seen what waited in the dark, and it had seen me. One day soon, it would come again. No survivors, no signals. But this time, we'd be ready, and we'd teach it that humanity's greatest weapon wasn't guns or ships. It was refusing to die. The machine came back in the 3rd year, not as a shadow, not as a flicker, but as an onslaught. Our deep probes caught the first wave, entire sectors going dark within hours. The stars themselves seemed to wink out, devoured by invisible fractures. Clark's last analysis was grim. It's no longer testing. This is full incursion protocol. Harlan stared at the map. System after system marked in crimson. "Can we stop it?" I answered before Clark could. "No." Not in the way the brass still imagined. Fleets of warships, planetary shields, orbital cannons. The machine wasn't a force you met head-on. It was the correction, the reset button of the universe. And now it had marked humanity for deletion, but we weren't the same prey anymore. The Black Watch had spent 3 years preparing, building, infiltrating, learning. We had weapons the old Earth Command barely understood. Mobile disruptor arrays, cognitive decoy systems, deep space mines that emitted pure conceptual chaos. And, most importantly, we had learned to think like the enemy, or rather, how to think in ways it couldn't predict. When the first fractures appeared in Sol System, we were ready. At least as ready as anyone could be. The first breach hit Neptune orbit. A scout fleet sent to intercept vanished within minutes. No wreckage, no signals. But this time, the Watch was watching. We deployed passive disruptor drones, stealth devices seeded months in advance. The data came through dirty, corrupted, but enough to show the truth. The entity had changed. It no longer unfolded as a single monolithic anomaly. Now it split into shards, smaller, faster, more adaptive. Each shard a miniature incursion vector, able to bypass traditional defenses and seed chaos from within. We adapted fast. Strike teams launched from hidden bases across the solar system. Our new disruptor craft, the Nyx class, named for the prototype that had crippled the first incursion, moved through the black like ghosts. One by one, we intercepted and destabilized the first shards. It worked, barely. Each kill cost lives, ships, mines. But for the first time, we weren't helpless. Earth's government remained in denial. Official broadcasts spoke of localized distortions and containment measures. But the truth leaked through. Cities rioted, governments fractured. The Watch moved in the shadows, eliminating cults, silencing rogue AIs, dismantling compromised networks. Steele was gone, dead in an early breach over Luna Base. I took full operational command of the Watch. No ceremony, no announcement, just a simple fact. There was no one else left who understood the enemy. And then came the second wave. 4 simultaneous breaches. Mars orbit. Saturn's rings. Inner asteroid belt. Earth high orbit. The machine was no longer playing. It was here to finish the job. We fought with everything we had. Nyx-class ships danced through the fractures, seeding chaos bursts and self-replicating disruptor clouds. Ground teams armed with conceptual resonance weapons purged anomalies before they could spread. AI allies, the few that hadn't been corrupted, wove dissonant signal webs to confuse the enemy. For a time, it held. But the machine learned. Faster than we could. By the end of the first week, Mars was lost. The inner belt fractured beyond recovery. Earth's sky burned with unnatural light as the atmosphere shimmered under quantum stress. Millions died in minutes, and yet, humanity endured. Because that is what we do. I stood in the war room beneath Prometheus 1, surrounded by flickering displays, half the systems running on jury-rigged chaos engines. Harlan beside me, face gaunt, but eyes bright with the same fire that had carried us this far. Clark manning the deep sensor feeds, fingers bleeding from days of no rest. Cole leading what remained of the strike teams, fewer every hour. We had one chance left, one move the machine couldn't see coming, because we hadn't seen it ourselves until now. The core fragment, the last piece of the original disruptor, wasn't just a weapon. It was a seed, a chaotic singularity, self-replicating, self-evolving, a mindless anti-pattern. And it had been growing. Clark discovered it first. "The fragment is changing," he reported. "Not decaying, mutating." I studied the new data, patterns fracturing faster than any algorithm could model. Can we control it? I asked. Clark hesitated. Number, but we can unleash it. That was the plan. Not to destroy the machine. That was impossible. But to poison it, infect it with pure, unbound chaos. A viral strike against a system that couldn't tolerate unpredictability. We had one delivery system left. The prototype Nix Prime. Half-built, untested. I volunteered. Again, Harlan refused to stay behind. If you go, I go. Cole the same. Clark would remain. His mind was too valuable to risk. He would coordinate what came next. If there was a next. Launch was chaos. The entity's shards were everywhere, hunting, folding space around Earth. We fought through hell to reach orbit, losing 2 support ships on the way. The Nix Prime burned for the heart of the largest fracture, a gaping wound near Saturn, already feeding tendrils toward Earth. Every second was a battle, reality warping, systems failing. But we reached the core and unleashed the seed. I will never forget what happened next. The fragment didn't detonate like a bomb. It spread, spiraling outward in impossible fractals, seeding chaos into every layer of the machine's structure. The stars themselves seemed to shudder. The entity screamed, not in sound, but in a wave of collapsing logic that tore through space. Shards flickered, collapsed, reformed and collapsed again, for one infinite moment. The machine was no longer a perfect correction. It was broken. The Nix Prime disintegrated. I should have died. Perhaps I did, but somehow I woke, back in Prometheus 1, months later. Earth had survived, again. Scarred beyond recognition, population shattered, ecosystems warped. But alive. The entity had retreated, or been driven off. For how long? No one knew.
Maybe years, maybe centuries, but not forever. The Black Watch remains, now the true guardians of humanity, in the shadows, beyond governments, beyond laws. We watch the stars, we train for the next incursion, and we carry the seed, the viral weapon that gave us this victory, evolving, changing. I am no longer the man I was. The seed touched me, burned part of it into my mind. I see things now, patterns no human should see, but that is my burden, my weapon. When the machine returns, and it will, humanity will not cower. We will not fight by its rules. We will fight as only we can, with madness, with chaos, with the refusal to be ordered. No survivors, no signals. That was its way. Now it's ours. We will endure. We will resist. We will win, or we will damn the stars.